It's interesting how the quickest way to get celebrity in America is to be a victim of something. And, we watched this a lot with the Me Too movement, which started as something that was probably pretty important and then ended up being just kind of pointing fingers at people for past grievances that could never be proven. And and that got a lot of media notoriety. And the ultimate, of course, was George Floyd. And not to say anything that happened to George Floyd was remotely defensible. Of course it wasn't. But it is amazing that moment the country seemed to collectively snap.
Yeah, I think we should be able to say several things at once. We should be able to condemn and recognize that what happened to George Floyd is unacceptable, that now that we've heard it and seen the facts in the court of law, we know the facts, the verdict was issued, there needs to be accountability, and I'm glad there was.
Sure, of course.
We should also be able to say that George Floyd is not a hero.
No.
He is not somebody that I want anyone's kid, whether they're black, white, or brown in this country, to aspire to be. And there may have been difficult circumstances that caused someone like a George Floyd to end up the way he did. Let's address those circumstances. But today we're trapped in this moment where George Floyd is implicitly celebrated as some type of martyr or hero. This is not somebody who we should want black, brown, or white kids to aspire to be in this country. There was actually a twisted version of this. We talk about the Me Too movement and sort of the feminist movement in this country more broadly. By the way, which I think if the feminist movement is defined as one that wants to have women treated equally as men in this country, count me on board.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a feminist on that definition.
Same.
100% hog wild in on that movement. But there's a puzzling feature of the intersection of what we saw play out in 2020 with, say, what we saw in the WNBA's response to it. So there's a guy, Jacob Blake, last year, who was arrested by a police officer, was a victim of violent confrontation with the police officers, who was called, the cops were called by an ex-girlfriend who felt that she was in danger by a man who had a restraining order against him for using violence against her.
That's correct.
Was refusing to leave her house, and she calls the police. He's going in, and the first round of media reporting didn't quite get this right, going down to reach a knife, a deadly weapon, and is shot in the back. Okay, so on the back of that set of incidents, what do you have? You have the WNBA wearing jerseys that say Jacob Blake's name on the back of that jersey, as though the WNBA, female NBA player, standing for female empowerment in many of the other hats that they wear, celebrating as a hero a man who was a perpetrator of domestic violence, violating a restraining order against a woman who he had abused, celebrating him as a hero. We can debate whether what happened to him was right or not. I'm a big fan of letting the facts play out. If the legal system comes out after looking at the facts saying that he was wrongfully shot despite the fact he was reaching for a knife, as I definitely condemn what happened to George Floyd, it is entirely possible that what happened to him was wrongful too. But we should be able to recognize that was wrong without celebrating the victimhood narrative that celebrates these non-heroes as American heroes, because that's going to take us to a worse place going forward.
You're right on the money on that. And I think Vivek Ramaswamy's story, Woke Inc. is the book, is much more interesting than Jacob Blake or George Floyd's. Sorry. Maybe I'll get canceled for that, but it is not that compelling of a story. We don't need to dwell on it as a society. We need to be remorseful and do what we can to correct anything we can, but it is the collective obsession with the victimhood class is making America a much more mediocre place. And it just does seem like that was the moment where officially we needed to hear whatever our favorite shoemaker or whoever makes our bourbon or whoever makes our golf clubs, what they think of Black Lives Matter all of a sudden at that moment, I don't care. But is that moment now, Vivek, is that something that is part of the culture forever? Is this indelible?
I don't think it's indelible. So I've been giving a lot of thought to this. And by the way, corporate America loves that moment being presented to itself. If you're Coca-Cola, you would rather issue statements about a new voting law in Georgia or teach your employees how to be less white than to deal with your own product's impact on the nationwide epidemic of diabetes and obesity, including in the black community that they profess to care so much about.
What a great point.
If you're Nike, you would rather condemn slavery 250 years ago in the United States without reducing your reliance on slaves to make your shoes today in Asia, to, by the way, sell $250 sneakers to black kids in the inner city who can't afford to buy books for school.
Correct.
This is great for if you're Nike, if you're Coca-Cola, if you're BlackRock, if you're United Airlines. This is a good game to play.